and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm here with you today to address something that we're seeing in the news, something that's being promoted by MSNBC. It's a message that really needs to be addressed because it's somewhat troubling in its implications. You probably saw this either on MSNBC, CNN, the major news media and the left-leaning news media, but it's a question that really hasn't been addressed. In fact, it's several questions, and we're going to try and address all of them in our response right now. Before we get started, though, we do want to mention that if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we welcome you and thank you for joining us, and we want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you to talk with you about all the issues that are affecting us, no matter where you are in the world. We reach out with YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, basically all the social media that the internet overlords will allow, and we hear your voice in your chats, your tweets, and your phone calls from anywhere in the world. And we do this because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to speak, even in countries where the government may not agree, even when the internet overlords don't agree, because we want to hear your voice. So we hope to see you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, to the issue today, we were watching, and we watch a lot of news, and we saw something that came from MSNBC, Mr. Ali Velshi, and I want you to see. So he was doing a piece earlier today, the Brennan Center, we need a political system that represents America as it is now. So there's something very important that's implied in that statement. It's a question about America wasn't diverse before, that the political system we have right now, which would be democracy, a representative constitutional republic, that it doesn't represent the people of America, that somehow the system is, well, according to critical race theory, the system is biased, it is broken, and that this isn't representative. And where are these progressives and the progressive ideology, where are they trying to take America to? So we want to look at this. Now, I want you to hear what happened on MSNBC before we respond. Here's exactly what they said.
Michael, what's the implication here? The implication when you look at the census, you say, we're diversifying. That should just mean more diversifying and better representation for the diversity that is America. But that's not actually what this necessarily means.
Now, before we go any further, there is an implication. Mr. Velshi has just made an accusation on MSNBC. He's saying that America is not representative, that we are not fairly showing the representation in America. I want you to understand this. Before we go any further, this is, and we have many sources, you're going to see the links in the description so you can go through this yourself. But looking at the history of America, America has always been diverse. There is no question. We've been diverse since the beginning, but in particular, since 2000, the black population has been 12.3, 12.6, 12.4, and currently 14% of America. In fact, if you're looking at, I think it was according to the numbers from the census itself, looking at the United States Census Quick Facts from July of 2019, there were 13.4% of America was considered to be black. So when we see Mr. Velshi say that, America is not diversified, there's a problem here, it's not representative. Well, America's always been representative of a diversity of people. So what is he really trying to say? Well, from the Brennan Center, we see an answer, and here it goes.
Well, what we see is that the multiracial, diverse country that is in the future is actually here now. And we need a political system that represents America as it is right now.
Wait a minute. What did he just say? That the diverse nation in the future? I want to play that again so you get to hear that again. And I want you to, we'll play it right here.
Well, what we see is that the multiracial, diverse country that is in the future is actually here.
Wait a minute. The multiracial, diverse country that is in the future. What is he talking about? This is gobbledygook. America has been diverse for a long time. Now, you may have a question about how diverse America is, but the fact is, we've seen going back a decade, a century, America's been diverse. That's not been a question. We've had a diverse nation. In fact, if we look at even in Congress, according to the Pew Research Center, back on January 28th of 2021, we see that 23% of Congress, that's the House of Representatives and the Senate, 23% of the Congress is Black, Hispanic, Asian. It's minorities. The percentage is here. There's 124 lawmakers that are Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American. So that doesn't seem right. Back in 2001, 63 members, or roughly about 12.5% of Congress, was the diverse, mixed, multi-ethnic grouping of America. So even going back 20 years, America was diversified. That's always been true. So what is this statement that we hear coming from the Brennan Center from Michael Waldman that America is going to be diverse in the future? And matter of fact, it's diverse now. Something has changed. This is brand new. You would have never known that. Excuse me, it's always been like that. So we see that they are setting up this mental image for you, that something has changed, that America is different now. And because America is now different, well, we have to change everything. This is the progressive socialist ideology. This is the Democratic Socialists of America. This is what they believe, that we have to change everything because all of a sudden everything is different. It's never been like this before, except every time we look at the data, we see that one, it has been like this, and two, we have been improving in America in representation, in a population-based representation of every group. In fact, right now, 13%, according to the Pew, this is according to Pew Research Center, right now, some 13% of members of Congress are Black. And if anything, the people who should be very upset right now happen to be those who are Hispanic or Asians, Pacific Islanders, and others, because they're underrepresented. I mean, the share of the Hispanics in the United States is, according to the January of 2021, was about 19%, and that's twice the amount of how many Hispanics were in Congress. Also, Asians and Pacific Islanders were underrepresented as well. So if anything, Hispanics and Asians should get more representation if everything is based on just your race and your gender. See, that's the problem. MSNBC and many of the progressives out there, the progressive news media, they want you to think everything has to be based on the gender and identity politics and racial politics. We have to have exactly the same number of men and women as is in the population, even as they tell us there is no gender, and that everyone should be gender fluid. That we have to have the same percentage of population that is trans, that has to be in our government. That we have to have the same exact numbers as the percentage of people in our nation in government and in business, in the highest levels. But why? Does that mean the best people are being selected? Or does it mean, kind of like with Kamala Harris, that they're filling in the right checkbox? Let's not forget, Kamala Harris in 2019, was completely rejected by Democrats. She never got more than 5% support by Democrats in the primaries for the 2020 election. And the only reason that she made it to VP is she filled in the boxes of racial ethnicity, the color of her skin, and the fact that she was a woman, a gender. Those were the requirements. That's what Joe Biden said he was looking for in a vice presidential candidate, that it had to be a woman, that he wanted someone of color, not the best person, not the person who could do the best job, but just whomever could fill those boxes. And you know what? That's pretty sad. That's really sad when we think about it. That's the main criteria. But this is what's being offered by MSNBC and Michael Waldman here from the Brennan Center for Justice. Now, I want you to hear another part of this as this conversation continues. And again, you can see this for yourself in full in the description. But here we go. This is his other guest. And this is what they had to say.
Both of them, Ali, had certified fair elections, yet they're trying to create more voter suppression because they recognize that just in Texas alone, there's 250,000 young Latinos that are going to turn 18 in time for the midterm election next year. It's all about this multicultural America that when we vote, we bring people and change into our democracy. We did it in...
Okay, so let's make sure we understand this. So his other guest here, who is, I believe, Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino. So, or I guess she goes by Latinx, whatever. So she's trying to tell us that Texas and Georgia are horrible places, that they are not representing people properly. And that's because of the gerrymandering that's going to be happening in the United States. And that this is a problem, that people will not be represented properly because of Republicans and Republican gerrymandering. And the most important thing is multiculturalism and making sure Latinos have the ability to vote. But wait a minute. We know, and we've covered on this channel before, Representative Nancy Grace and Representative Chip Roy of Texas have already come up and mentioned to the Texas Democrats that ran away from their job in the legislature and came to Washington, D.C. We know that some 70% of blacks in Texas are registered to vote. That some 62% of blacks in Texas actually go out and vote. And that the numbers for whites in Texas are 72% registered and 64% that actually go out and vote. Essentially, the same number of people who are white and black are going out and are voting in Texas. The fact that there's going to be more Latinos voting doesn't really matter. People are voting and they do have the ability to vote. So what's the problem here? And again, this is what MSNBC is trying to promote to you, that there is a problem, that America has suddenly become multicultural and suddenly people are not being represented because they're not able to vote. But this data is that we are voting and we can vote and we have been voting. Whether you want to look back in 2010, 2020, the fact is people are being represented and they are voting and they are in Congress. And we have been more representative over the years. So that's not the problem. And we've been seeing this, and again, we can go back to the University of New Hampshire that shows us that in June 25th of 2020, just look at the pie chart. We see that the population race in the United States, Hispanics, blacks, whites, America's always been a diverse nation. That diversity mix is changing, as is normal in any country like the United States, where so many people from around the world come to us. Millions every year come into the United States, changing those numbers. But realistically, it's not a new thing. It's not something that's changed or different. In fact, when we look at the United States right now, we can see the population is 332 million people. We're the third most populous nation in the world. And of the nations that are populous, with all these people, we are the most diverse. You don't get diversity of population in China. You don't. In India, you don't have the population diversity that you have in the United States. You don't get that in Indonesia, in Pakistan, Nigeria, Brazil, Bangladesh, Russia, even in Mexico. There is no nation in the top 10 nations, and I would counter in almost anywhere in the world, that is as diverse as the United States already, and has been for decades, if not centuries. So that's not exactly true. That's not realistic. We're seeing that MSNBC is giving us a false impression. Now, the data did just come out from the census, and we can see that, as reported by the U.S. Census, that there has been change. But again, there's a misrepresentation that you're seeing that's being very popular. I'm sure that you have seen in the news, reported by CNN and MSNBC, that there was a 276% increase in the number of people who are multiracial. That people who decided to pick some other race other than Black, Hispanic, or Asian, that there was a 129% increase. Okay, so let's understand this. Did this change America? Did suddenly we have this massive influx of people from all across the world? Actually, no. It's not that we saw a massive difference. We saw a difference in the way that people are picking it. See, we've had a couple of decades of individuals under the Obama administration, now with the Biden administration, where we've seen Democrats absolutely focus, especially since 2020. We saw a massive focus on the idea of being multiracial, gender and identity politics. Identity politics is huge. Intersectionality, critical race theory, massive influx that we have to identify. You aren't just Black. You aren't just white. You aren't just an American. No. You're a Bangladesh American. You're a Black American or an African American. You're an Irish American. You are, what is Kamala Harris again? Indian American? A person of color? What's the matter with just being Americans? Well, that's a different question altogether. But the reason why we see this difference is for generations, going back well before President Obama, but looking just in his time in office and his emphasis on BLM and inviting them to the White House, even as their members are going around shooting police officers and others in Dallas, Texas, what we see is that there's been a massive push to tell people you can't just be one category. You got to fill the boxes. And you want to be multicultural. Remember, there's white privilege. No one wants to be white. Look at all the liberals that are out there, and the progressives that are out there, the far left that are saying, oh, no, we have to apologize for being white. There's white privilege. Don't recognize yourself as white. They can be transracial. Remember, what's her name? Ms. Dolan's, Shaun White. These individuals who are transracial. They gave up being white. They are accumulating or assimilating being Black. Even though they're not, but they want to be Black, and they want to be recognized as being Black, and they fill out documents and get that. One of the most famous people, Elizabeth Warren, is notorious for the fact that she decided, I am an American Indian. That's what she said. She's a Native American Indian, signed off on federal documentation, got grants and preferential treatment in college, in business, and in her elections for the claim that she is a Native American Indian, and then turns out to be less than 0.001% of actually being a Native American Indian. She's about as Native American Indian as I happen to be Samoan. That's the thing. So we really haven't seen a change. But what we did see is not a change in America, not a change in the diversity in America, but a way that Americans are identifying themselves, because that's what we've been trained. That's what we were taught in schools. That's what we're teaching kids in colleges. Diversity, diversity, diversity. That's all you hear about now. Listen, critical race theory, gender identity politics, intersectionality. You can't just be, your sexuality has to be, what is it? Democrats have 32 different genders. I mean, it's insane. And we know that also these numbers were altered because the census doesn't actually represent the American people. According to the White House under Joe Biden, on January 20th, his first day in office, he changed the census. He changed the results of the census. As you can see here, the population of each state for purposes of congressional representation, federal, without regard to whether its residents are in lawful immigration status. The executive, he's saying that because he's now in the executive branch, the census will now count everyone who happens to be in America, whether or not they have a legal right to be in America. So that means if you're an illegal alien, you got to be counted in the census. In fact, that is one of the major reasons why New York State only lost one congressional seat, even though the population had dropped, because the illegal aliens made up that difference. In fact, New York State could have possibly lost 3 congressional seats because of the amount of population that had disappeared. How many years was New York State leading the nation in people exiting, a complete exodus? 5 years in a row under Andrew Cuomo's governorship, that there was a mass exodus out of New York State, that according to rental agencies, the leading number of people leaving any particular state was from New York State. 5 years in a row. But the illegal aliens made up that difference. And that's because of the executive order. So these numbers aren't accurate. Not for American citizens, although it may be accurate for the people who are in. Now, one of the other things that's being alleged here, and I want to address this, by Mr. Ali Velshi, MSNBC, is that, well, this is about the gerrymandering, and it's gerrymandering in Republican states, that this is a problem because people won't be able to be represented properly. You see, that's a lie. Let's look back at history. Let's look at the reality here. This is from the New York Times in 2012 about the New York redistricting. New York was so gerrymandered, it was so politically biased, not to say that New York State is not politically biased today, being the bluest of one of the bluest of blue progressive capitals in the nation. In fact, New York State is the progressive capital on the East Coast, with California being the progressive capital on the West Coast, the 2 most progressive states in the nation. And the thing is, being a progressive, bluer than blue state meant that New York State was absolutely messing with the numbers. They were jury rigging everything. You see, this is from New York Times, the New York 22nd District, which is down here. This weird little map here. You see this on the screen where it's, and I can't get that overlay from not showing up, but you can see it's this weird shape right down here, going from Ithaca, traveling down along the bottom of the state line, and then encompassing this area just over by New York City, in the suburbs of New York City. That was the New York 22nd District. You know why it was put together that way? Because of its distribution. That's with 9.7% black, 73.6% white, 11.9% Hispanic. By the way, at that time, 2010, again, the American population did not respect, that's not reflective at all. 12.6% of America was black at the time. The number of Asians were 4.8. Well, the Hispanics were roughly about 12% as well, as I recall. I'm sorry I don't have that number right in front of me. But again, looking at what the New York Times is telling us, so the numbers are out of whack. Actually, the number was right there on the screen. New York State is 14.8% black, but not in the New York 22nd District. It was 17.6% Hispanic, but not in the New York 22nd District. The numbers are all completely skewed. And that's because this is gerrymandered. This is designed to be in favor of progressives in New York State. In fact, it took a panel of federal judges in New York State to put into place a congressional map that was done by a court-appointed magistrate to get some sense of reality, some sense of non-political partisanship. So that's important. So when we hear MSNBC saying, we have to watch out for this gerrymandering, we have to look for these states who are going to abuse people and rig the numbers so that they can win more easily. You know what they're talking about? They're talking about New York State. They're talking about California. By the way, you saw what the number, how it was designed before, going down along the Pennsylvania border and going down in this section of New York. Well, when they redesigned New York State's congressional districts, it went to this number suddenly, where we have 89.2% white, 4.3% black, 3.1% Hispanic, 2.4% Asian. They changed the numbers and emphasized white people. And that's what the courts did. And again, this gives you an idea of how biased this is. And again, this is a crazy design. You went from this insanity behind us into this more reasonable box. So when they tell us that, oh, no, you just don't understand, and we have to protect people, they're not trying to protect you. Not from partisanship. They're not trying to protect you from gerrymandering. They're trying to protect the Democratic power. That's why they're talking about Texas and they're talking about Georgia. That's why they're implying that there's some kind of redistribution that needs to happen. That's why they're saying that there's the inability to vote in Texas, which is a lie. It is a lie. And they know it. You know, when we take a look, and this is from YouGov poll on U.S. politics, came out today. And according to the recent Census report, the U.S. grew more diverse in the past decade. There was an increase of about 23 million people who identify as Hispanic, Asian, Black, and more than one race. Again, how people identify. Not necessarily that there's more of these people. We have more people identifying on a more broad sense. More people are saying they're multicultural, that they're more than one ethnicity, more than ever before. Most people were just Americans, not anymore. And the number of people who say they are more than one race has doubled in the past decade. Does that surprise you? And 85% of respondents said no. They're not surprised that America is more diverse. You see, that's the thing. Americans aren't upset or worried or concerned about the diversity of America. We've always been diverse. And since the 1970s going forward, we've been very aware of being racially diverse and respectful to one another. But MSNBC wants us to think it's something else, that we need to change our political system, as we saw from Michael Waldman say. We need to change our system because America is this new creature that has never existed before. And what some people thought was going to happen in the future, even though it existed in the past, is now here today. So we need to change things. We need to make sure that Democrats are more represented than ever before. That's political bias. And we have to understand, and one of the things I want to look at is what is more represented. What kind of system do they want to put in? What are they looking to change America into? This is kind of like the question that should have been asked of President Obama. When he said, hope and change, we need to transform America. Transform it into what? We're hearing them say that we need a political system that represents America. And I have to ask the question. We have to change the system to represent America. To change it into what? To what political system? What is Michael Waldman of the Brennan Center trying to change America into? What does he want to see as a representation system? Because we can see what Democrats are doing right now and what they're looking to do. You see that According to the Washington Examiner, Schumer outlined $107 billion to give a path to citizenship for illegal aliens. Came out on August 9th. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer outlined plans for Democrats to pass legislation to give legal status to some immigrants illegally residing in the United States and to fund border security improvements. In other words, he is giving a path to citizenship to illegal aliens, people who have broken the law in the United States and are actively continuing to avoid getting punished for their illegal crime. And yes, illegal aliens are criminals. By legal definition, they are criminals. They broke the law of the United States. And they are illegal. They're not undocumented because they lack any authorization to be in the United States. They're not just some immigrants illegally residing. They're not illegally residing. They entered the United States illegally. They broke the law. And we know that we're looking at $100 billion, about the same amount of money that is being spent by Democrats to fix our bridges and our roads is being spent to give to illegal aliens at a time that the United States deficit is insane. We are looking at, under the guidance of Democrats, we're looking at, according to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, the United States will be $32.4 billion in debt by 2025. That's a massive increase. But it could be worse because, according to the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, it's actually almost $37 trillion. You think that's pretty bad? If we just continue at the rate that we're going right now, if the tax and spend Democrats are allowed to continue with the majorities that they have and passing budgets like we're seeing with the $3.5 billion spending bill that's about to hit America on top of the $1.1 trillion that was already passed, you're looking at $50 trillion. That's nearly double the American debt as of this moment today. That's insane. We're looking at, even in the best case scenario, according to Democrats, which the government is never in the best case scenario, you're looking at 124% of the debt to GDP ratio. That 21% of spending versus the GDP. That's incredible debt. You could never be able to keep that up. Matter of fact, and that's assuming that the national debt, that the interest stays exactly where it is right now. Because right now, it's what? 2.2%? 2.25%? Imagine if we go to the normal, natural interest rate. You would see that increase because the normal national interest rate is normally, historically, over 40 years, roughly about 4 to 6%. You're looking at the debt, the interest on the debt increasing by double, possibly tripling. It's almost $1 trillion a year just in debt because of interest rates changing. And interest rates will change. They will go higher. Inflation is going higher even as we speak. So this is really important because we're seeing a lot of things. And again, I'm focusing on what is it that these Democrats, that these individuals at MSNBC, like Michael Waldman, like Ali Velshi, and Miss Maria, what's her name? Maria Kumar, they're all here. What are they trying to transform America into? What are they trying to change things into? Because that's really the question we really need to ask ourselves and continue to ask. Because what we're seeing from Democrats is, this is, according to Senator Ted Cruz, who happens to be Hispanic, on August 6th. Here's the images of Donna, Texas, where we see still these cages that Democrats tell us shouldn't have existed, that were created by the Obama administration and were demonized against Republicans during the Trump administration, are again under the Biden administration completely filled and overflowing, just like they were back in February. We see that Democrats and even some Republicans, the former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, are out and attacking American citizens for not doing what the government is telling them. You know, you see Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, he says here that your freedoms don't matter. We have to come together rather than fighting and always just saying, according to my principles, this is a free country and I have the freedom to wear no mask. Yeah, you have the freedom to wear no mask, but you know something? You're a schmuck for not wearing a mask because you're supposed to protect your fellow members around you. It's just that simple. Wait a minute. Arnold Schwarzenegger is trying to tell you that you have a right to make your own personal decisions about your personal health care, but he doesn't like it. So you have to do what the government says because he's telling you to do it or else. Let's remember something. The pandemic is 99% survivable. Something that keeps getting missed in all the news media. Whether it's whatever variant you want to talk about at the moment, every variant remains, while it's highly contagious, absolutely contagious, it is almost entirely survivable. So whether you wear a mask or not, as we did before, we spent a year, more than a year, with masks on. We've had vaccinations for how many months now? 9 months? And people who are vaccinated are still getting sick, are still transmitting it. That's according to the CDC. So, and we have variants that are coming out, like the Lambda variant out of Peru, that is resistant to all the vaccinations. Not because of America, not because of people wearing or not wearing a mask. No, it's already resistant. Comes out of Peru. So what is he actually saying here? What is Arnold Schwarzenegger telling us? Do what the government says. Forget that you have any freedom. Forget your rights. Do what the government tells you to do. This is what the Democrats are promoting. This is what they want to see America transform into. That's what these Democrats, these progressives on MSNBC, that's what they're telling you that you need to do. You need to just listen and do what the government says. And it's working because look at what they're saying. This is from Reddit. And this is from August 12th. It's okay to blame the unvaccinated. They're robbing the rest of our freedoms. How can you rob someone else's freedom by exercising your own freedom? See, that's what we're hearing from Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is the message that they're putting out to American citizens. And I'm not telling you that you should or should not be vaccinated. You can do whatever you want. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you want to wear 3 masks, remember, that's what Dr. Fauci was recommending, wearing double masks and triple masks. Whether or not those masks are effective is another question, but you should be double masked and triple masked. And whether you want to do that or not, that's your choice. We're not asking you to make that choice. But what we are saying is, look at the demonization that is going on, that people are insisting you must do what they say, regardless of what your freedom is, regardless of the fact that we know that 97 to 99%, depending on whether it's a CDC or WHO, the results of this is survivable. But we hear people who are saying, where is it? I couldn't give 2 S's about vaccine eligible adults getting COVID, but I'm worried about kids who can't get the vaccine. Well, they can get the vaccine. Of course, the infection rate, while kids can get the infection, the morbidity rate, mortality rate is absolutely at the bottom. Of all individuals, children are the least at risk. But, I'm worried about the potential vaccine-resistant variant, which is coming out of Peru. What else is this? I'm fully at the if they die stage. They wouldn't be taking up ICU beds. This is what Americans, presumably Americans, are saying about other Americans. This is what's being promoted by MSNBC. This is the mindset that is out there right now. And we hear that all over the place. Here's from ABC News talking about a Dallas county that is refusing a ban on masks. There's a mandate in Texas saying, or rather, there isn't a mandate in Texas. The Texas Governor Abbott said there is no mandate. We will not require by the government, with the full force and power of the government, that you must be wearing a mask. And here's what a judge decided to say.
Liberty and freedom is important, but your liberty and freedom does not extend to harming your neighbor any more than it would extend to, leaving your lights on in a air raid.
Wait a minute. That's the most stupid thing I've ever heard. So, your freedoms end at someone else's life and liberty and pursuit of happiness. That's true. Everyone agrees with that. There is no question. That is what the Constitution states. But look at what they're saying to us. Oh, your freedom is, if you're having your freedom, well, that's harming someone else. You are actively harming someone else by living your life and making your own personal decisions and speaking to your doctors about your health care. That you are a danger to other people. You're as bad, according to this judge on ABC. This is Judge Clay Jenkins from Dallas. And Judge Jenkins is saying, well, you living your life, doing what you need to do, is the same thing as a World War II air raid in England, where we get to see that if someone had their lights on, that the Germans were able to bomb London because of that. That you're as deadly as 1940s Germany. That you are actively killing American citizens. Well, that's not true. Because with masks, people died. Without masks, people died. With isolation, people died. With vaccinations, people have died. It's a virus. You cannot stop it completely. And you can reduce it, but we see these things continue. But he's saying, no, you don't have that freedom. Just like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's telling you your freedoms don't matter. By executing, by having your freedoms, you are harming other people. We hear this a lot from progressives all the time, that you living your life, that's a problem. When you live your life, you are damaging people. What is they say about, what is it that they say about being gender and racial, the gender identity politics, the critical race theory? If you aren't a progressive, if you aren't trying to be apologetic for being white or believing in white privilege, then you're part of the problem. You have impeded, you have harmed others because you're not doing what they say you should be doing. This is a problem. And I want you to understand how bad this problem is, because again, this is what they've said to us. I want to come back to this again. Ali Velshi is promoting through MSNBC this progressive ideology that says we need to change America. We need to change our political system into what we don't know. What's better than what America is doing? We don't know. There is no other nation in the world that is as diverse. There is no nation in the world that is as diverse as the United States. There is no other country in the world that has as much freedom as the United States. These are facts. But yet they are telling us that we need to change this into some other political standard that they won't tell you what it is. But you have to change it in the name of diversity. And what does that diversity mean? That diversity means that, as you can see from Black Enterprise, an Atlanta school principal is under fire for racially segregating classrooms. That's right, the natural extension of safe spaces has now become segregation. We're back to the 1950s. And this is coming from Democrats, who also in the 1950s believed in segregation as well. And that includes Joe Biden in the 1970s. Remember, Joe Biden, 1974, he didn't want to integrate schools. He believed in a racial jungle if there was integration. That's fact. Check it out if you don't believe me. So we're going back to the 1950s. We're going back to segregation. According to what was stated by Akila Posey, who happens to be a member of the vice president of the local PTA, the principal, Sharon Briscoe of Mary Lynn Elementary School, has put in segregation. This is a violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which says that you cannot treat one group of people differently based on race, and that's what's going on at Mary Lynn. Can you believe it? We have a principle that is actively segregating because of critical race theory. This is the new political system that MSNBC is telling you you must adopt, because America has suddenly, out of the blue, become racially diverse, even though we've always been. And we have to go back to the 1950s. In fact, we have progressives who have said, according to the Stanford report, April 21st, 2004, that we see individuals like New York University professor Derek Bell suggesting that generations of black children might have been better off if segregation, if Brown versus Board of Education was actually upheld, that separate but equal from the 1896 standard of separate but equal was kept in place. That's okay. Segregation is okay. By the way, it took from 2004 to 2021 before we would see anyone in America, before the progressive ideology, this movement towards segregation and racism, would be accepted and considered a good thing, as we can see that this Atlanta principal, Sharon Briscoe, has now adopted. She believes in reversing the civil rights movement of the 1960s and 70s, reversing that completely and going back to the segregation of the 1950s, just like Professor Derek Bell, a leading proponent of critical race theory. You know, and I want you to understand, it isn't just that principle. It's all over the place.
Mr. President.
Senator from Arkansas.
Growing up, I was taught, as I suspect most of you were, that America is a great and noble nation, in large part because, as Lincoln put it, it's dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. In America, our rights have no color. Our law and society should be colorblind, and as Dr. Martin Luther King said, we should not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. Sadly, today, some want to replace our founding principles with an un-American ideology called critical race theory. They want to teach our children that America is not a good nation, but a racist nation. Those teachings are wrong, and our tax dollars should not support them. My amendment will ensure that federal funds aren't used to indoctrinate kids as young as pre-K to hate America. Our future depends on the next generation of kids loving America and loving each other as fellow citizens, no matter their race. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the amendment.
Okay, so this is Senator Tom Cotton saying we should not celebrate, we should not promote segregation in our schools across America. The segregation, which was removed from the 1950s mentality due to the civil rights movement of individuals like Dr. Martin Luther King, that America improved and that we have grown, just like we showed you, that America has been improving decade after decade, just like we can see here in our House and our leadership and representation. We went from 63 members of Congress being people of color to 124, from 12% to 23%. A movement of diversity, of inclusion that you hear Democrats and MSNBC love to talk about, but they want to change the political system. So much so that we had to have an amendment put in by Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas to say that we aren't going to segregate our schools again, that we believe in the ruling of Brown versus education, and that separate is not equal. Segregation is a bad thing, in opposition of Professor Derek Bell. That we have to have a constitutional amendment to a bill to say that Principal Sharon Briscoe of Mary Lynn Elementary School is wrong, and she cannot segregate schools, especially without telling parents. Just doing it because of racism, because critical race theory. This is what they're trying to do. This is what Ali Velshi, MSNBC, this is what they are promoting without telling you this is what they are promoting. These are the things that they are trying to move forward. You know, the United States, they're trying to tell us, well, we need to transform America. We need to make it into an entirely different nation. And they're not thinking about the consequences of this. You know, the Democratic Progressive Movement said, we have to get out of Afghanistan. We've been there for 2 decades. We need to leave. And we're doing it. We're running away at the fastest pace that we possibly can. We left Bagram Airport empty. It's not a question. It's a fact. We just ran away. And when we ran away, we empowered the Taliban, a group of people who want to kill Americans. And remember, they attacked us. That's why we decided to fight back. And so now we're running away so fast that we're not allowing our allies, we didn't even tell them we were leaving. Bagram Airport, we turned off the lights and ran away in the middle of the night because that's what Joe Biden said to do as commander-in-chief. He told the people, run away. We left tanks, we left guns, we left bullets, we left food. The Taliban took all of that. It's so bad right now that we have to send 3,000 troops, brand new troops, into Afghanistan just so we can get our people out of the embassies. We're sending in 3,000 fresh troops into Kabul airport to help with a partial evacuation of the U.S. embassy. It is so bad, and we have left such a huge power vacuum because we just ran away, that we are creating a problem that the Taliban is taking advantage of, that they are sweeping in, even though Joe Biden told us this is not a problem. Taliban won't necessarily take over. We can run away as fast as possible and it will be all right. Because the consequences don't matter, because they're not thinking about the consequences. What they're thinking of is, we need a new political system that represents America as it is now. This is terrifying. You know what's even worse? Because Ali Velshi isn't just leaving it at that. He's having many conversations with people, and he's trying to convince you that we need to change everything, and that if you disagree with it, well, then you are the problem, and you are racist. Let me show you what I mean. This is from, again, today, a different segment from MSNBC talking about the Texas Democrats who ran away from doing their job while getting paid, and whether or not they should be arrested for evading their jobs.
Let's talk about this philosophically. The idea that these Texas Democrats are holding up this vote, they have left, in some cases left the state, in order to stop something that they say is unconstitutional because it will take away voting, the ability to vote from people. And for that, they are being threatened with arrest by the governor. And the sergeant at arms seems very determined and interested in actually having them arrested. Tell me what.
See, now let's clarify a couple things. Number one, the Texas bill, if you actually read it, does not stop people from voting. Again, in Texas at this moment, 70% of blacks in Texas are registered to vote. 62% of blacks in Texas actually go out and vote. For whites, those numbers are 72% and 65%. So blacks are almost exactly the same as whites in going out to vote. This Texas bill, which is in front of the Texas legislature, that the Democrats, the progressives, don't like, would require voter ID, something that 72% of blacks in America actually support. So This is an amazing thing. And they're saying, oh, well, this is terrible. Having a voter ID that most blacks in America support is going to be a terrible thing. How dare you do that? Besides the fact that Joe Biden on CNN has already said in the town hall, as we have reported earlier, that blacks aren't smart enough to get ID, which seems to be the most stupid thing you've ever heard until you hear this.
What your thoughts are on this?
Is as if you decide, I'm not going to work today. I don't feel good. I don't like the values that's been upheld there. Therefore, I'm not coming. And MSNBC send law enforcement to your house to say, no, you're going to come to the studio. We're going to hold you captive until you interview a guest. It's outrageous. It's a form.
Yes, it is outrageous because that is stupid. That has nothing to do with it. The Texas Democrats who ran away from their job are not the same thing as an MSNBC host who says, I'm sick today and I'm not going to work. They're not the same thing. So let's understand this, because, again, they're trying to misrepresent this. They want you to think that the Texas Democrats haven't done something wrong, except they have. They are not doing their job. If you are a member of Congress, if you are an elected official, your job is to show up and to take a vote, to represent your people, your constituents, as best as you can for the ideas that they believe in. And if you have enough people who believe the same thing that your constituents believe, you pass a bill or you don't pass a bill. This has always been true. This is the American system. It's a representative government. And so this is a constitutional, representative constitutional government, democracy. And now we're seeing that MSNBC, again, is telling us, no, that's not quite true. Again, they want to give us a new political system that represents what they think should be America. They want us to be able to hate other people. They want us to actively tell people that they are evil and wrong for not doing what the government, and in particular, the progressives, a splinter of the Democratic Party, believe in. And they want to tell us that if you disagree with this, well, then you're a racist. If you don't believe in segregation, that they're trying to put it into schools, well, then you're a racist. They're trying to tell us that if your elected officials not only refuse to do their job by actually taking a vote, whether or not they're going to win, that's not a matter. They won't do the vote. They run away from their state while being paid by taxpayer dollars. They go on vacation to Washington, D.C. and to some Caribbean islands on taxpayer money so that they could avoid taking a vote because they don't like the outcome that the people, the constituents, have supported, and according to polling across the nation, that the people in America support overwhelmingly. And they're trying to let you think, well, this is like if you didn't go to work and your job sent a bunch of police, law enforcement to come and get you and force you to work. Except, this is one part of the government punishing people who aren't doing their job for the government. And they didn't send anyone out to get them. They said that if they come back and they're still not going directly to the legislature to vote, as is their obligation. This isn't a question. This isn't a if or maybe. This is their obligation that if they don't go back, they're going to get arrested, which means they're going to be taken to the legislature so that they can hold the vote, so that they can do what they were elected to do, what their obligation is, what their job is. So again, we see MSNBC is trying to lie to you. They're trying to change the way that you were thinking about this, to try and make this. And why do they have a black member of the NAACP speaking about this? Because this is about race. This is about racism. Except it has nothing to do with racism. Because, again, the majority of blacks in America want what Texas is doing. And we don't see the end of this. What else is it that MSNBC, that Ali Velshi is trying to change America into? What kind of political system are they trying to put in place? Well, think about it. This is Claudia Tenney. We now see that Twitter, the internet overlords, are actively out there trying to suppress people's voices. This is Claudia Tenney, a member of Congress, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, representing the New York 22nd District, is being silenced by Twitter, that she is being shadow banned. This is not new. Because as we've reported in the past, we've seen Twitter do this before, where 800,000 conservatives and Republicans' voices were silenced, including members of Congress, by accident. That there were algorithms created by Twitter that were accidentally just happened to silence the voice of conservatives and Republicans, 800,000 of them. And here they are doing it once again. This is the system they want to change America into. This is the new representation they want. If you don't say what they want you to say, they're going to silence you. They're going to tell you that you are evil and they'd be happy to see you die. They're saying that you have to segregate schools because that's what they want. Because racism's okay. This is what the Democrats are saying to you. It's not the Republicans who are doing this. But Republicans are getting punished for this. We see that it was Twitter that decided that they wanted to punish another member of Congress, Senator Rand Paul, for doing exactly what Dr. Anthony Fauci has done. In fact, it was YouTube, we stand corrected. YouTube suspended Dr. Rand Paul. Dr. Rand Paul, who happens to be also a senator. So this is a medical expert. And they punished him and suspended him for saying the same thing that Dr. Anthony Fauci has already said. That other leaders of the medical systems around the world, including Dr. Michael Waldman, has said the same thing. And he was part of President Joe Biden's transition team, Dr. Michael Waldman. And they said the same thing about the effectiveness of masks. And we see that part of this transition, again, this change in America, this new political system, that MSNBC won't tell you what it is, but they will tell you that we have to change into it because America is new. It's different than it has always been. That somehow, because America is doing exactly what we've done in the past, because the people in America are exactly the same people that they have always been, that we have to change our system, that we have to become far more, we can't respect people's freedoms anymore. We have to hate each other, that we have to go out and we have to segregate each other, that we can't believe in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, that we have to go out and we have to allow our politicians to run away from doing their job and allow them to break the law. And we have to allow the progressives in our communities to go around using obscene language to make threats against our city councils, our elected leaders, that these individuals are able to use the same tactics that BLM and progressive leaders of tomorrow have used throughout all of 2020 to create autonomous zones and to burn down our cities and to increase crime. Remember, crime is up, what? Well over 100% in many of the 22 cities that defunded our police, that have absolved the members of Plot and BLM and Antifa. Their charges were dropped. They weren't arrested. Even though arsons took place, even mostly peaceful riots took place and were telegraphed live. We saw autonomous zones where children were killed in Seattle, in Atlanta, and we saw drive-by shootings on live national TV in George Floyd Square in Minneapolis. But that's okay, because this is the new system where we get to see individuals like this individual. That's insane. that this is the new system that we're supposed to accept. This is the new political system that these Democrats, MSNBC, want to promote, where we have Joe Biden lying to the American people, where PolitiFact is literally telling people one thing in 2019, and Joe Biden, in his own words, in a national speech, speaking at CNN's town hall, literally tells us it's not true. We're talking about the Second Amendment. Joe Biden literally tells the American people he wants to get rid of 9mm pistols and any firearm that's capable of semi-automatic fire, to destroy the Second Amendment, something that PolitiFact said, no, he never said that. That's not true in 2019. And in 2021, Joe Biden says it on national TV. This is what the progressives want us to see. This is what the national news media want us to do. We see that Joe Biden has actively defied the Supreme Court, is actively breaking a branch of the government and destroying their power by actively going out and violating the Third Amendment and creating an eviction moratorium that he was expressly told he can't do, that he admitted he doesn't have the power to do, and he's doing it anyway. Because, as Ali Velshi has mentioned, we need to create a new political system. We have to destroy America to create a new country that has new rules. You know, we've gone over this. What is it? It's been about an hour that we've been speaking, and I want to thank you if you made it this far. We really appreciate that. And please, if you've made it this far, please do subscribe, because it's important to share this with other people. But in an hour, we have gone through a series of ways that MSNBC, that CNN, ABC News, the mainstream media, and a splinter group of a political party, progressives, the Democratic Socialists of America, a splinter of the Democratic Party, they have a direction that they want to take America in. They want to change everything. And the things that they are trying to change America into, none of them are positive. None of them have outcomes that work out well for the American people. They work out fantastic for the elites, these elitists that, like Representative Cori Bush, who are able to hire $70,000 worth of security forces to protect them as they defund Minneapolis, and we see crime and violent homicides increase by, 100%? You know, this is a trouble. So yes, we took an hour to really pay attention to what was being said by MSNBC, what was being said by Ali Velshi, what was being said by It was Michael Waldman and Maria Teresa Kumar. We're paying attention to them. And we had to address this because it's far, far more than what this 5-minute news bite presented to you. MSNBC on YouTube has 4.46 million subscribers, individuals that are able to see this. This is a message that they are telling Americans, that they're trying to spread out there. And they want you to believe this. So let me ask you, do you believe in segregation? Do you believe that people should be judged by the color of their skin? Throwing away what Dr. Martin Luther King said. Do you think that politicians shouldn't do their jobs, that they should take your taxpayer money and go on vacations because they don't like the outcome that they're going to get, because they want to violate what the majority of Americans believe and want? That we should spend money on people who willfully broke the laws of our nation, and we should give them money and we should make them American citizens because it's in the benefit of this small partisan group. That we should include them in our census and in our spending in the United States because they happen to exist, because they're violating our laws. We should reward them, and somehow that's going to reduce, because America is the greatest nation in the world, the most diversified nation in the world, one of the largest nations in the world, because life is so much better here. We are encouraging them to come to America by telling them we're going to pay for them to live in America against the law, and then we're going to change our laws to make sure that they're going to be taken care of because it benefits a political party. We're going to increase segregation. It just amazes me. Now, maybe you think the news sources that I have used, which are almost entirely either from the government or from the far left, maybe you think that's unfair. Maybe you think there's more information from the left that are better because these sources are not accurate enough. Maybe you believe that it's a positive for segregation to tell people that they have to apologize for the color of skin that they were born with. Maybe you believe that we should reward criminals for breaking our laws willfully and evading prosecution of the law. Maybe you think that someone making a personal decision about their health care is a crime and a violation of your rights and freedoms, that they are committing a violent act against you. And again, they're living through they're making their personal health care decisions, and that is a crime and an attack against your personal decision for your health care decisions. Maybe that's what you believe. If that's the case, we want to hear what you have to say. We're looking for your comments. Please let us know, because we want to understand. We want to know if Ali Velshi, if MSNBC, if they're correct, because we don't think most Americans agree. And we invite you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to join us in our live stream as we speak directly to you and listen to your comments and your phone calls about this and other issues that affect us all every day. We again thank you for spending your time here with us today as we went in depth on this question and its consequences. And we hope that you'll come back and join us again soon.